My name is Claire Morgan, and I was kicked out of my own home by my biological parents just because I called 911. Not to cause trouble, not to rebel. I just wanted to help a little girl from next door, the one who stood trembling by the side of the road, her face bruised, like there was no one left in this world willing to protect her. But when the police took her parents away, the first person to get angry was my mother. You never know when to keep your mouth shut. And then came the sentence that ended everything. If you can't live the way this family lives, then get out. Have you ever been called a troublemaker for doing the right thing? If this story touches something inside you, leave a comment below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, because next, I'll tell you what happened when I decided not to be the good daughter anymore. I still remember the day my brother, Ethan Morgan, set fire to a classroom at our elementary school. The smell of smoke still lingers in my memory like it happened just last week. I was 8 years old and Ethan was 11. The whole school was evacuated. Firefighters arrived, local reporters took pictures, and when everything passed, my parents didn't ask Ethan why he had been playing with fire near the bookshelf. They just turned to me, their voices sharp. "Claire, where were you? Didn't you think to stop your brother?" I remember standing frozen, not understanding why an 8-year-old had to take responsibility for a fire. But Ethan stood next to me, eyes watery, lips tightly pressed. He didn't say a word. And my mother, the one who always claimed she raised us fairly, pulled him into her arms and whispered, "He's probably stressed about the test." That was the first time I was blamed for something I didn't do. But it wouldn't be the last. Ethan was always the protected one. Not in a normal way, but with an invisible shield around every wrong thing he did, making it all seem understandable. He stole money from Dad's wallet to buy sneakers? He didn't want to be laughed at by his friends. He skipped school for 3 days to play video games? Maybe he was tired and needed to relax. I once tried telling Mom. One time when I found out Ethan had taken $60 from her purse, I told her. She looked at me and snapped. "Claire, you need to stop being so jealous. Who do you think you are to judge your brother?" I didn't say anything after that, but inside I felt exhausted. Exhausted from always having to be the child who never caused trouble, while Ethan was the excuse everyone protected. Exhausted because every time I cried out of frustration, Mom would say, "Again, why do you always make such a big deal? You really are a drama queen." And when I stayed quiet, they would ask, "What's wrong with Claire? Why can't she be more in tune with the family?" There was never a right answer whether I stayed silent or spoke up. I slowly became a shadow in my own house. I ate on time, did my own laundry, finished all my homework, but no one noticed. Every birthday, Ethan got a party with cake, balloons, and friends crowding the house. And me? A small card on the kitchen table, sometimes a last-minute gas station gift card. One time, I asked, "Mom, no cake this year." "There's always a..." My mom slammed the pan down hard on the stove. "Claire, how old are you now? Still asking for things like a child. Why can't you ever think about others?" Since that year, I started buying my own cake. A small one, just for one person. They called Ethan the school hero when he scored a goal in a high school game. I was the one who always ruined the family mood, just because I didn't smile during dinner. Ethan grew up with the confidence of someone who believed the world was built to serve him. I grew up cautious, always wondering which of my actions would be twisted. I can't remember the last time I truly felt safe at home. Maybe before I could speak. I used to think there would come a day when they'd see the difference, that if I studied harder, behaved better, they'd see I also deserved to be loved. But that never happened. The harder I tried, the more ignored I became. I lived in that house like a tenant with no voice. Worse, I had to clean up the consequences Ethan left behind. No one asked if I needed help. Eventually, I stopped asking myself that too. Because when you grow up in a family where your feelings are always seen as too much, at some point you start to believe that maybe something really is wrong with you. That's how I grew up. Not loud, not remarkable, just someone who learned to dry her own tears and remind herself. Don't bother anyone. Don't cause more trouble. Don't make things worse. And then one day, when Ethan caused the biggest disaster in my life, I was still the one they blamed. I still remember how cold it was that night. The kind of cold that cuts into your skin, sinks into your spine, and makes you shiver even without wind. I was downstairs when I heard yelling from upstairs. It was Ethan. Still that familiar tone, contemptuous, controlling, never allowing anyone to have a different voice. I walked up the stairs, intending to say one simple thing. Could you stop yelling at Mom like that? But before I could finish the sentence, Ethan spun around and shoved my hand away with such unexpected force that I lost my balance. I flew backward and slammed my back against the wooden steps. The sound of the impact echoed in my head like metal striking stone. My mother came running. In that moment, I thought she would help me up, ask if I was okay. But she didn't look at me. She knelt beside Ethan, grabbed his hand like he was the victim. Are you okay? What did Claire do to you now? I lifted my head, lips pressed tightly, feeling hollow inside. Mom, he pushed me. She turned, face like stone. Stop the theatrics. You always exaggerate everything. Do you know what outsiders would think if they saw this family? That sentence was like a dull knife. It didn't kill immediately, but it sliced deep through every layer of my soul. I got up without looking back. I went straight to my room, stuffed a few clothes into a bag, grabbed my wallet, picked up my cracked phone from the last time it fell. I opened the back door and stepped outside. I didn't slam the door. I let it close slowly, so gently no one heard. Quiet, like I had always been. A life so quiet no one ever cared. I spent the first night in my car, parked in an empty lot behind an abandoned strip mall. The old Corolla I had bought with money from a high school part-time job was the only thing I still owned. It smelled like old plastic and sweat, had hand-cranked windows, and its paint was peeling almost completely. But at least inside it, no one judged me. During the day, I looked for work at roadside diners. At first, they all said no. We're not hiring. Where's your resume? You look too tired. Then one small family-run restaurant agreed to let me wash dishes by the hour. $12 an hour, no insurance, no contract. I said yes immediately. I worked from 4 p.m. to midnight, scrubbing piles of greasy plates and scorched pots. Dish soap cracked my hands and my nails peeled off. Some days, when I couldn't afford gloves, I wrapped my hands in old plastic bags just to ease the sting. After each shift, I returned to my car. I parked in the Walmart lot because they didn't forbid it, as long as I didn't cause trouble. I taped cardboard over the windows, curled up in my only fleece blanket, and lay on my side so I wouldn't see the security lights shining on my face. Each morning, I brushed my teeth using a bottle of water from the dollar store, wiped down with wet tissues, and changed shirts in the car. If I was lucky, I had enough time to slip into a public restroom and dry my wet hair under the hand dryer. I no longer knew what an evening at home or a family dinner felt like. I ate instant noodles made with hot water borrowed from a coffee shop. Sometimes it was a discounted sandwich from the almost expired bakery shelf. I learned to stretch one pack of cookies and an apple across 3 meals. There were times I wanted to call home, but then I remembered the look in my mother's eyes when she said, "If you can't live the way this family lives, then get out." No phone call had the strength to get past that sentence. One early winter morning, I woke up to a soft tap on the window. It was an older woman with white hair, wearing a long sweater, holding a paper coffee cup. "Do you need any help?" I hesitated and nodded. Not because I trusted her, but because I didn't have the strength to say no. And that was the first time someone looked at me like a real person. Not the troublesome daughter. Not the shadow behind hero Ethan. A 19-year-old girl with raw dishpan hands living in a car trying to survive. in a city where no one would notice if you disappeared. I still didn't know where I was going, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going back to the place that once called itself home. Because this time, if I built a life again, I wanted it to be something no one could take from me. The pandemic came like a cold fog, creeping into every corner of life. Within weeks, everything I had held onto slipped through like dry sand between my fingers. The diner where I washed dishes shut down, no notice. One early morning, I arrived to find the metal shutter pulled down and a handwritten note taped to the door. For public health reasons, we are forced to temporarily close. Thank you for understanding. I wasn't a customer. I was the night shift worker, the one who cleaned bathrooms after rush hours, who took out the trash at 2 a.m. when everyone else had gone home. But my name wasn't on any official list, and I didn't qualify for unemployment benefits. The old Corolla, my home at the time, started to fail. One evening, while parked near a gas station, a security guard knocked on the window and told me to move. "You can't sleep here overnight anymore. New city policy," I pleaded. He looked at me, not with malice, just blank resignation. "I get it, but if you stay, I lose my job. I'm sorry." I started sleeping in suburban parks, each night a different spot, away from bright streetlights, away from the drinking crowds. One night, I had just dozed off when I was jolted awake by footsteps and the slurred voice of a drunk man. I didn't have time to react. A hand yanked my bag, threw my phone to the ground. I lunged, screamed instinctively. He ran. But the torn purse was gone. I sat there until morning, hugging my knees, shaking from the cold and panic. When daylight came, I picked up my phone. Screen cracked, but still had battery. I didn't call 911. I opened the map app and stared at a familiar address. Home. Or at least, the place once called that. I hesitated for a long time, but then I made the call. It rang 3 times before someone answered. My mother's voice came through, colder than I remembered. "Claire," I swallowed. "Mom, I'm not asking for much. I just need to park in the backyard, just for now. I won't come inside. I won't bother anyone. I don't know where else to go." There was a pause. Then she said, "We have a young child here, Claire. You can't stay. It's not safe." Not safe. For who? You know what I mean. Ethan and Melissa are trying to keep things peaceful for the family. I can't let you disrupt that. You're saying I'm the threat? I'm just protecting what's left. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. I heard the sound of a wooden door closing, even though no one actually shut one. I hung up, stood silently by the side of the road near the old house, about 10 houses away. No curtain moved on the second floor. The house still had that yellow kitchen light on, the same place I used to stand, washing dishes, never allowed to speak during dinner. I didn't knock. I turned away, back, aching. After that night, I returned to the park but couldn't sleep. I started thinking about worse possibilities, being arrested, attacked again, freezing to death one night without time to react. I knocked on the door of a small church in an old neighborhood. Not to ask for shelter, just to charge my phone, wash my hands, and maybe a bit of peace. The pastor was a woman named Rachel. Silver hair, a patient smile. She didn't ask where I came from. She simply said, "You can stay in the backyard for a while. There's an old shed. Not comfortable, but better than the street." My throat tightened, as if opening my mouth would let all the tears escape. A week later, I received a food bag from a volunteer. Inside were instant noodles, a packaged sandwich, a few soft apples, and a handwritten note. "Don't think of yourself as a burden. Sometimes you might be the reason someone else doesn't give up." I kept that note in my coat pocket for months. It didn't warm my body, but it softened something in my chest. And my family? Ethan still lived peacefully in the house with the garden, a beautiful wife, a well-behaved child. My mother still went to church every Sunday, wearing the dignity she always used to cover what she never dared speak aloud. I had nothing left to lose, and in that exact moment, with my hand gripping that old letter and the sunlight piercing through the shed roof, I realized I was standing at the edge of something. But for the first time, I wasn't afraid. Something had started to grow, something small and stubborn. Maybe it was faith. Not quite hope. A quiet certainty. I wasn't going to end here. I met Deborah Lancaster on an April afternoon while I was standing next to an old gas pump, trying to pry open the trunk that had jammed after the last rainy night. My hands were scratched, my head light from going all day without proper food. She pulled up in a silver pickup truck, small build, hair tied back, eyes deep like someone who had lived many lives. Old car? The lid sticks. You have to twist it left and pull straight up. She smiled and stepped closer gently. Just one hand, a smart twist, and the lid popped open like nothing had ever been wrong. Thank you. So much. No trouble. I used to drive one just like her. Temperamental little thing. We both laughed. A short laugh, out of place between gas fumes and fading daylight. She didn't ask where I came from, but her eyes seemed to already know. Before getting back into her truck, she turned around. If you need a place to park tonight, I have a backyard. I opened my mouth to refuse out of habit, but then I nodded. She lived alone in a small house on the edge of town, with a modest garden out back full of tomatoes, squash, and rows of climbing beans. There was an old mobile home, dusty and still, parked at the edge of the yard. Neat and humble, like it knew it was a guest. That night, she made chicken soup and cornbread. I ate slowly, one spoonful at a time, shy like I was breaking some rule. You can stay a few days, help me in the garden if you like, nothing too heavy. I'm getting old, those tomato plants are starting to beat me. And so, I stayed. Every morning, I woke up before the sun rose. I watered the plants, cleared the weeds, repaired the rotting wooden fence. Deborah baked or made jam. Always busy, but still talked to me in a steady voice like a morning radio host. I used to have a daughter, but she's gone now. Everyone has their own path, don't they? I understand. After a few weeks, she called me into the kitchen and handed me a printed sheet from an old computer. I know you need something more permanent than tomato plants. An old friend of mine manages a packing warehouse in the next town. I gave them a call. They need help. I took it, my hands trembling slightly. Do you think I can do it, Claire? She looked at me gently. From the way you trimmed each little beanstalk this morning, I think you can do anything you set your mind to. The packing warehouse was a place where no one cared who you were as long as you showed up on time and did your job. I started the morning shift, 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., standing 8 hours straight, labeling, checking inventory, lifting boxes. At first, my shoulders ached so much I had to use warm compresses every night. But I didn't complain, because after every shift, I knew exactly where I was headed. I opened a bank account. Each week, I deposited a portion of my paycheck. The rest went to essentials and a jar of muscle cream. I started learning how to mend clothes, fix zippers, changed my own car bulbs. In the evenings, Deborah and I sat on the porch with cups of tea. She told stories about her younger years, about life in Texas in 1972, about the husband who once took her across the state on a motorcycle. Back then, I left home too. Not because I was kicked out, but because I knew I wasn't myself there. I looked at her. There was something in her eyes that made me feel understood. That fall, Deborah started coughing more. I offered to take her to a doctor, but she shook her head. I know my body better than any doctor. She still baked, still watered the plants, but her voice grew weaker. Her hands began to tremble as she held the teapot. One morning, I woke up early as usual, but the scent of baked goods wasn't coming from the kitchen. I knocked on her door. No answer. Deborah lay there, peaceful like she was just asleep. Her hand rested gently on an old leather notebook. Inside, in shaky but clear handwriting, it read, "Claire, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. But don't worry. This house is under my name, and I've included your name in the will. The mobile home, too. Keep living the life you deserve. I believe in you." I collapsed onto the floor, speechless. I didn't cry right then. I just held the notebook to my chest, feeling something huge settle in my heart. Not loss, but something I had never been given before. Trust, from someone who had no obligation to believe in me. From that day forward, I called that small yard home. And the old mobile home at the edge of the garden was the first thing I had ever truly owned. No one could take it from me anymore. I hesitated for a long time before posting that photo on Facebook. Just a small corner of the porch, afternoon light shining through a faded yellow lantern, an old house number clearly visible. With a short caption, I rewrote 5 times before pressing post. Rebuilding a life from the back of a car. I didn't expect anyone to care. No filters, no hashtags. I just wanted to mark a moment for myself. A small anchor in my mind. To remind me I hadn't fallen. 3 weeks later, I got a message notification from Ethan. "Are you free this weekend? We want to visit, let the kids see Aunt Claire's new house." I read it over and over. Not because I was surprised, but because of how smoothly it read, like nothing had ever happened. I didn't respond right away, but they still came. One Saturday afternoon, I was mopping the floor when I heard a car pull up at the gate. Ethan got out first, that same backward-leaning stride like he was walking on stage, followed by Melissa, holding hands with Max and Sophie, each holding a snack bag, giggling. I opened the door, still holding the cleaning cloth. Ethan beamed. "Look at this place, it's adorable, like something out of one of those little Vermont movies." Melissa nodded, scanning the porch. Rustic style. Cozy. Warm. The kids must love running around here. I gave a polite smile. I planted some flowers out back. Still a work in progress. "Really? Any swings?" "Max loves swings," Melissa asked, but her eyes darted toward the front door like she couldn't wait to go inside. I let them in, not because I was comfortable, but because I knew better than anyone. Refusing now would only make them escalate. Ethan walked around the living room, arms crossed like he was assessing value. Oak flooring, holds heat well, and the windows look recently replaced. When we reached the main bedroom, Ethan stopped. "Oh, the master, right, with a view of the garden too?" Melissa looked around, smiled faintly. "It's really spacious. A crib would fit nicely in that corner." I turned, resting my hand on the doorframe. "Are you two looking for a house?" "Not exactly," Ethan said, shrugging. "It's just, Mom and Dad's place is getting tight. The kids are growing, and Melissa's expecting number 3. "Congratulations," I said plainly, eyes fixed on their faces. "Thanks. So, Claire, I was thinking, maybe you could move into the smaller room. We'd take the master, just rearranging things a bit, to make it practical." "Yeah, the house has 3 rooms, right? You live alone. We need space for the kids. Melissa needs rest for her pregnancy. And what would I be in this practical setup?" Ethan laughed, patting my shoulder like the decision had already been made. "You'd still live here. We're not taking anything from you, just sharing, supporting each other. Family helping family." Melissa chimed in. "We were thinking of enrolling Max in the preschool nearby. This area feels a lot safer. And Mom and Dad, they need a bit of peace too." "Claire, we only want what's best for everyone." For some reason, in that moment, I thought of Deborah, of how she used to quietly pour tea each night, never interrupting my silence. And I thought, if she were still alive, she would look at me the way she did when I first spotted a caterpillar in the garden. "You know what to do. I don't need to say it." I'm glad you think the house is charming. But I didn't build it for other people to come in and rearrange everything to their liking. Ethan blinked. Claire, do you have to make this a big deal? I'm not making it a big deal. I'm being clear. So what are you saying? I'm saying no to any room. This is my house, not ours. Melissa shrugged, smirked. Wow, still holding on to the past, huh? No, I just learned to remember exactly who slammed the door on me. Ethan sighed, took a step back. We just thought maybe we could rebuild something. I looked straight into his eyes. If you want to rebuild, you start by asking permission, not by suggesting I move aside like I'm the extra in this house. No one said anything more. They left without rushing, without arguing. But as Melissa stepped onto the porch, she turned back with a smile. Claire, sometimes family needs one person to compromise, but maybe you still haven't learned that. True, the house I built wasn't a mansion, no double garage, no vast backyard for kids to run around. But every nail, every coat of paint, every quiet corner held something they could never understand. It was something I created, without needing them. That evening, I got off work later than usual because a packaging line had jammed at the end of the shift. It was already dusk when I turned down the narrow road home. The small house appeared under the familiar golden porch light, quiet and ordinary as ever. Until I stepped onto the porch. The doormat was pushed out of place and the living room curtain was slightly parted, a habit I never had. I bent down to insert the key, but it wouldn't turn. I tried again. It wasn't the old lock anymore. I stepped back, my heart pounded in my chest. I walked around to the side window, the one that angled into the hallway. The lights were still on inside. Someone was moving around. I held my breath, took a few steps further along the wall. Then I saw Melissa, arms full of clothes, walking through the hallway like she had been living there for weeks. The kitchen window was slightly open. I heard Ethan's voice. Put the last few boxes in the bedroom, okay? I'll bring the microwave from my parents' house tomorrow. I stood there, gripping my bag handles so tightly my fingers shook with rage. They weren't planning to move in, they already had. I stepped back, pulled my phone from my coat pocket, and started recording. My hands trembled, but my voice stayed steady. It's Tuesday, 6:42 p.m. This is the house under my name. I came home after work and found the lock replaced, with people illegally occupying the property. I walked back to the front door and rang the bell once. No answer. I rang again, longer. The door opened. Ethan remained still, like none of this concerned him. Claire, you're home early. Why was the lock on my house changed? Ethan exhaled, like he had been waiting for this. We talked about this, remember? You agreed to let us stay here. This is the lease. He pulled a folded piece of paper from his jacket and held it out to me. I took it. The print was smudged, the paper wrinkled, with a distorted signature at the bottom. My name, but not my handwriting. Either, I said slowly, eyes fixed on the forged ink. You just committed document fraud. Melissa stepped out, arms crossed, her gaze cold. Oh, come on, Claire. Don't make a scene. You left this place empty all week. We're just making sure it's taken care of. By changing the locks while I was at work? If you don't want people moving in, maybe you should live here full-time. Melissa, I said, still holding the camera at chest level, you're admitting to breaking and entering, and modifying someone's home without consent. She lunged to grab the phone. I stepped back, but too late. The phone hit the porch steps, screen shattered. But still recording. I didn't pick it up. I pulled out my backup phone, the old one I used for podcasts, still on LTE, and called the police. 15 minutes later, 2 patrol cars parked outside. A male and a female officer stepped out. I spoke first. I'm Claire Morgan, legal owner of this property. These 2 broke in and changed the locks without permission. I showed them the deed, utility bills in my name, the full video footage, including Melissa trying to snatch the phone. Ethan gave a nervous laugh, trying to interrupt. We have a lease. She signed it. The female officer examined the paper. The signature doesn't match. No notary, no proof of payment, and she reported being locked out. Melissa snapped. She abandoned the house. That's property forfeiture. There's no valid legal documentation supporting that, ma'am. The male officer replied firmly. Melissa turned to me, eyes blazing. This is disgusting. We're family. How could you treat us like this? I don't have any family who behaves this way anymore. The officers ordered them to vacate within an hour. I stood still as they rushed out with boxes. Far quicker than when they moved in. Belongings were tossed into their car. Max and Sophie sat in the back seat, wide-eyed but silent. Melissa cursed under her breath as she shut the door. Ethan kept his head down. As they drove off, the female officer turned to me. You might want to change the locks again and install exterior cameras. They could come back. I will. Thank you. That night, I propped up the broken phone, extracted the footage, trimmed it down to the clearest clips. Ethan handing over the fake lease, Melissa grabbing the phone, and my statement to the police. Didn't add a word. The video said enough. The next morning, I woke to dozens of messages. Old friends, coworkers from the plant, even a classmate from 8th grade, reaching out with support. One old friend commented, I always felt something was off whenever you stayed quiet about your family. Now I get it. After the video went viral, things in my life started to shift. Not loudly or dramatically. It happened quietly, in small steps. Like everything was finally falling back into place. A high school acquaintance, Natalie, messaged me. She worked overnight shifts at the community health center in the next town. We'd never been close, but she wrote, Saw your post. If you've got a spare room and want a little extra income, I'm looking for a place to stay for a few months. I'm quiet, tidy, just need a calm space to sleep and get to work on time. I sat in the kitchen reading her message for a long while. Not because I was unsure, but because I felt something strange. Trust. Someone from my past trusting me enough to share my space. I replied, The back room has a window that faces the garden. Fresh sheets are already there. You can come anytime. Natalie moved in that weekend. She brought 2 suitcases and a potted basil plant. Hope you don't mind if I keep this on the porch. I'm used to waking up to the smell of something green. I shook my head and smiled. I have tomatoes out back. Maybe they'll become friends. We lived like parallel rivers. No collisions, just steady presence. She worked nights, I worked mornings. We left each other notes on the fridge. Sometimes, banana bread in the container. Other times, backdoor sticks, double check. The house that once felt like a fortress of isolation now had a second heartbeat. But I no longer feared someone would take it from me. Ethan wasn't so lucky. I didn't follow his life, but in a small town, news finds you, a coworker told me during lunch break. You hear about Ethan Morgan? His wife, Melissa, right? Caught seeing someone else, think it was his best friend, that Italian guy from their soccer days. I didn't react. My hands moved on their own, ripping open the packet, sprinkling salt over the noodles. Apparently it's been going on for a year. And the kicker? The youngest kid's not even his. You sure? Sure. Someone at the hospital leaked the DNA test. He asked for it after having doubts. Results came back. No match. He's crushed. I didn't feel triumphant. A quiet hollowness spread through my chest. A part of me still remembered what it felt like to be betrayed, rejected, and dismissed. On Thursday evening, I was folding laundry when I saw Mom's number flashing on the screen. I let it ring 3 times before answering. Claire. Her voice was hoarse, nothing like the rigid tone I used to know. Either. He's not okay. He's not eating, not speaking, just lying there. It's been cold these days, and now he has a fever. Melissa left without a word. I know I have no right to ask anything, but he's your brother. He's still family. For now, that's all. Let him stay somewhere clean, quiet, get back on his feet. I leaned against the wall and closed my eyes. Every word she spoke dragged me back through the mud of the past. Those nights I slept in the rain, and Mom said, "It's not safe for you to come home." Those times I was thrown out, and she stood behind them, hands steady. "Are you asking for Ethan or commanding me again?" Begging. Because if I could take him in, I would, of already. I thought about what Deborah once said on a summer afternoon when I asked if she had any regrets. She turned to me and murmured, "The only way you lose is if you forget how you once survived." I'm not a saint. I don't forgive easily. But I know what it's like to be cast out, treated like excess. I hung up. Looked at the camper still sitting at the back of the yard, carefully covered. I stood there for a long time, not to weigh right or wrong, but to listen, to see if this heart, after years of being squeezed tight, still had room for a decision not driven by resentment. I called Ethan on a Sunday morning. The air was still cold, dew clinging to the grass. I stood in the yard with a printed stack of papers in hand. He showed up minutes after I'd texted. Wearing an old hoodie, hair messy, dark circles under his eyes like he hadn't slept in days. I didn't invite him inside. I handed him the papers and a pen. "This is a temporary housing agreement. If you sign it, I'll let you camp in the old trailer out back. No more than 3 months. After that, you find your own path." Ethan glanced down at the papers, then up at me. "Claire, I know you have no reason to help me, and I don't need to explain why I still do. The agreement clearly stated, no entry into my house without written permission, no Melissa, no overnight guests, no noise after 9 p.m., no contact with Natalie or other tenants, no accidental changes to any items, structures, or landscaping on the property. Violation would mean immediate termination." Ethan read every line, then signed. No arguments. Deborah's trailer was still intact, carefully maintained since her passing. I'd thought about converting it into a small studio or summer reading nook. Now it became shelter for my brother, the one who once took from me not just a home, but any sense of belonging. I cleaned it, made the bed, left a few dry goods in the tiny kitchen. When Ethan stepped in, he paused, placing his hand on the old fridge. "This was Deborah's?" She used to say, "If something saved your life, don't throw it away just because it's old." Ethan gave a sad smile. "You think that applies to people too?" In the beginning, Ethan moved like a shadow. No noise, never crossing the line I'd drawn. He quietly worked at a small mechanic shop across town, came back after dark, and usually turned on only a single light to cook before going to sleep. Max and Sophie, his kids he was trying to get custody of, came on weekends, playing under my and Natalie's close watch. Max was quiet like his dad. Sophie liked weaving wildflowers into crowns. One day, she handed me a purple one and said, "Aunt Claire, I made this so your house smells prettier." I smiled and accepted it. Not because of the flowers, but because her little hand smelled of earth, the same scent I once carried when I first learned to garden, with Deborah. That night, I was watering plants when I heard something strange from the trailer. Not a crash, not voices, just a muffled sound. I walked closer, but didn't knock. I remained still outside the misted window, unseen. Through the dim light of the bedside lamp, I saw Ethan on the floor, head buried in his hands, shoulders shaking. A man I once called brother, now unraveling in a space he used to think was beneath him. I opened the door and walked in without a word. Ethan didn't look up, but he knew it was me. "I see it now, Claire." His voice cracked, unable to hide anything anymore. "You were right." I sat on the folding chair by the kitchenette. His hands still covered his face, his back curved like someone who had finally lost everything. "I used to think you were too sensitive, too loud. But really, I was just too selfish to see anything beyond myself." Ethan looked up, eyes red. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it, I just want you to know. I finally understand. All of it. I looked at him, the man who once shoved me, forged papers, took everything I built, and I realized, forgiveness isn't a gift you hand out. It's a decision to keep living without letting the past control every step. I got to my feet and moved toward the door, steady and sure. I'm not erasing the past, Ethan, but I don't need it to hold me anymore. I opened the door, then turned back for a second. I'm making red bean stew tomorrow. If you want some, be there by 7. Don't be late. No, thank you. No slam door. The sound that followed was a sigh, low, tired, like surrender without words. One spring morning, I woke up to laughter in the yard. Max was running around the tomato patch, waving a plastic dinosaur. Sophie was crouched at the flower bed, drawing in the dirt with a dry stem. No one told them to quiet down. No one yelled, "Let the adults rest." They belonged there, free, safe, like this yard had always been their sanctuary. I sat on the porch with a warm cup of coffee. Natalie stepped out the back door, wrapped in a gray cardigan, and waved. They're adorable. Max even asked if he could help you pull weeds this morning. I laughed. As long as he doesn't pull out the basil, we're good. My life is quiet now, but not silent. There's the clatter of little feet, the kettle whistling in the afternoon, Natalie's soft jazz playing late at night. Sounds no one controls, no one suppresses. I don't know exactly when I stopped thinking of family as something to reclaim. Maybe when I nailed Deborah's photo to the living room wall. Maybe when I invited Natalie to dinner, not out of politeness, but because I truly wanted her there. Maybe when I taped Sophie's doodle to the fridge, next to the electric bill and the weekly grocery list. I'm not trying to make up or fix anything anymore. That afternoon, I was watering the bean vines when I saw a figure by the gate. My mother. She wore a thin coat, hands clutching her bag, eyes watching me through the unpainted fence. The usual pride in her posture was gone. No judgment in her gaze. I didn't speak. I kept watering, slowly moving along the row, letting the water flow. She lingered there, motionless. When she finally spoke, it was barely more than a breath. I was wrong. I looked up but didn't walk closer. A breeze passed, brushing my hair aside. She said nothing more. No excuses. No reasons. I said nothing, only nodded once and made my way back to the porch, the watering can pulling on my wrist. She remained behind, already fading. I knew she hadn't come to stay. Not to reclaim anything. Maybe she only wanted to see how her daughter was living. Maybe, for the first time ever, she saw I no longer needed her approval. That evening, I sat on the porch with a blanket around my legs, listening to the wind brushing the roof. The lights inside still glowed. Natalie was reading. Max and Sophie had gone to bed by 7:30, after I told them a story I once thought I'd never share again. Ethan wasn't home yet, but I knew he'd return. Walking quietly through the grass, tapping twice on the back door like a silent greeting. And I would still be here, firmly living from the center, not the margins, of my own life. What would you do if the people who cast you out returned? Not to apologize, but to witness you living better than they ever imagined. I don't need their validation anymore, because when you build your own home, when you regrow trust from the roots, you don't owe peace to anyone else. You carry it within. What about you? Have you ever had to rebuild your life from scattered pieces? If this story speaks to something inside you, leave a thought below, because your words might be the strength someone else is waiting for. And don't forget to follow the channel to hear more quiet but powerful stories about family, choice, and coming home to yourself.